like what the meme of friction is slowly like getting demystified, right? Like this thing where more clicks equals you care more about it or whatever.
Mm.
It's getting more and more demystified. I wonder when that's gonna swap over finally to unidentifying it whatnot, so we can
Yeah.
finally only identify fun stuff like Watcher's Eyes or like the belts, and everything else we can kind of filter, sort of like last epoch, where they're still very much against that, but I think that's just the next step as well, right? Like
Yeah, we'll
once
let them know. Yeah, we'll let them know.
What we just listened to is the voice of the modern Path of Exile community, and it absolutely terrifies me. It's hard to imagine it's been 15 years since we first stepped foot on Wraeclast. Path of Exile's ongoing development has been the almost singular beacon of hope for hardcore gamers who have been disregarded by the rest of the industry in favor of cheap experiences designed to cater to the lowest common denominator gamer. The existence of grinding gear games and their success is what gives me hope for the future of gaming. The idea that a small group of passionate people with a vision can make a world that I want to spend my days in is one of the only things that brings me optimism when I think about what has happened to the gaming industry over my lifetime. I started my exile 15 years ago while I was attending a collegiate summer school during my high school years. As I'm sure a lot of you can relate with, being a nerdy high school student who watched Crip streams all day didn't really make you a popular person in real life. And like you, I'm sure, I was okay with that. I didn't give a shit about girls or climbing the social ladder. I wanted to game. But more importantly, I wanted the game to mean something. You see, something I struggled with all my life is the identity of being a loser. From a bird's eye view, a man spending his waking hours in front of a screen is emblematic of everything wrong in our culture today. The incel, the no life, the guy people tell to touch grass. But I'd argue that a man who found a world worth caring about, a community worth belonging to, and a challenge worth losing sleep over is anything but a loser. The losers are the ones who never cared about anything deeply enough to be called a nerd about it. So, I hope it's clear how much I love this game and the people who built it. But sometimes the people who love something the most are the ones willing to say what others won't. And I think grinding gear games may have lost their way. Path of Exile has no grind anymore. I don't mean that as a casual observation. I mean it as an indictment of almost every major design decision made in the last several years. The grind was never the obstacle, the grind was the point. It was the friction between you and the power that made the power feel like something. And piece by piece, that friction has been sanded away until what's left is a smooth, frictionless ride from level 1 to max gear with no emotion to show for the journey. Let's start at the beginning, the campaign. The evolution from a 3-act journey you ran 3 times across 3 separate difficulties to a full 10-act arc was a massive achievement. GGG built something genuinely epic, but expanding the world didn't fix what was happening inside it. 15 years ago, the campaign had teeth. Every zone had friction, and every boss had gravity. I still remember the dread of entering the city of Sorrow for the first time, knowing somewhere in the fog was a bear trapper that could end your run in one hit. And campaign moments like killing the Vol Oversoul felt like an accomplishment because it was one. Even the thought of killing Piety on hardcore on release felt like a pipe dream. These weren't just encounters you clicked through, they were moments the game built towards and demanded you be ready for. I remember grinding Cool Ledge for hours just to find the support gem I needed. Not because I necessarily wanted to, but because I couldn't move forward without it. My build had a hole in it, and the game made me go fill it. Now, you walk up to a vendor, spend a transmutation orb, and continue to blast on. I get why that feels like an improvement to people, but something left the room when that change happened. The game used to send you looking for things before you could beat it. Now the campaign is a loading screen. It's a thing you do before the game starts. Players race through it in a few hours, brains completely off, and the game lets them. It was designed to let them. And that's a mistake, because the campaign was where you fell in love with Wraeclast. It was where the game taught you to respect it. When you remove the struggle from the introduction, you remove the emotional foundation the rest of the game is supposed to stand on. And then you reach the end game, and the problem doesn't get better, it gets worse. You used to have scarcity, not in a punishing way, but in a way that made finding the right item feel like an event. The economy meant something because not everyone had everything. Your build had compromises and workarounds and creative solutions born from necessity. The tension, that gap between where you were and where you wanted to be, was the game. Now that gap is gone. Currency floods in, the market is saturated, and you could assemble a fully functional build so fast that the question of, can I afford this, barely has time to form before it's already answered. Yes. And when nothing is scarce, nothing is precious. This feeling isn't unique to trade leagues either. During my latest hardcore solo Seltdown run, I had more divines and six links I knew what to do with even before hitting red maps. The game now makes finding those items feel like a requirement instead of a reward. When was the last time you clicked a normal chest in a map? When was the last time you hunted down the last 30 remaining mobs because every kill felt like it mattered? When was the last time you farmed blue maps because your build simply wasn't ready for rare modifiers yet? The journey of the endgame used to be a game in and of itself. The slow accumulation of maps and loot made the exciting moments feel exciting. You could brick your progression. You could hit a wall and have to claw your way back from the lower tiers. And yes, that was frustrating sometimes. But since when was anything worth doing a linear experience? Relationships, markets, adventures, none of them are just a straight line up and to the right. They have peaks and troughs. And without those troughs, peaks don't mean anything. Path of Exile has removed every trough from the endgame experience, and in doing so, made the peaks feel like they were never really peaks at all. Now, I know the game still has some of these friction points. They haven't disappeared entirely, but they've been pushed so far down the progression curve that by the time you encounter them, you're already powerful enough that they may as well not exist. The friction is still there on paper, you just never have to feel it. Oh, your build is only doing 10 mil DPS instead of the 100 mil DPS it could be doing if you had the Ubu secret special item? Wow, you must be so miserable. Give me a break. The addition of the new void zones, which effectively declare that T1 through T15 maps may as well not exist, is perhaps the most honest admission of what the game has become. GGG didn't just remove the slow burn of early game progression, they formalized its irrelevance. And as someone who used to love scraping together maps and inching forward, that stings. Uber bosses were the ultimate confession. When the game naturally had teeth, you didn't need to manufacture a harder version of endgame bosses. The difficulty existed organically because your character wasn't a god, because your loot wasn't perfect, because the systems created resistances on their own. Uber pinnacle bosses exist because GGG looked at what the player base had become. Players who deal damage numbers that shouldn't be physically possible. Players who clear maps in seconds. Players who feel nothing, and they tried to fix it from the outside in. I understand the impulse, but it's a band-aid on a self-inflicted wound. You can't design the challenge out of the game and then bolt it back on at the end and call it a feature. The damage numbers are too high because the scarcity is gone. The scarcity is gone because the grind is gone. And the grind is gone because somewhere along the way, someone decided that friction was the enemy. It wasn't. It never was. The friction was the game. I want to be clear about something. I'm not making this video to lament what Path of Exile 1 has become. I'm making it as someone who desperately wants GGG to build the best game possible in Path of Exile 2. I know these opinions won't be popular on Reddit or in stream chats, but I don't need them to resonate with everyone. I need them to resonate with people like Mark and Jonathan. I don't want Path of Exile 2 Worthless version to come out 5 years after its release because I don't want Path of Exile 2 Ruthless version to come out 5 years after release because the difficulty and grind have been so watered down, the base game is hardly recognizable. Path of Exile 2 has done a tremendous amount of things right, The campaign is an emphasis again, not a checklist you clear so you can get to the part that matters. It's part of the journey. Moments like the Act 3 monkey fight are exactly what this game needs. And yes, I have specific balance complaints. The idea that I can't invest enough into my passive tree to tank the monkey slam is a conversation worth having. But that's a tuning problem, not a philosophy problem. The philosophy that the campaign should be a legitimate challenge, that bosses should demand something from you, that the journey should mean something. That philosophy is right, and seeing it alive in PoE 2 gives me genuine hope. But what concerns me isn't GGG. Not really. What concerns me is the feedback loop they're standing in, because the loudest voices in any gaming community are rarely the ones who want what's best for the game. They want what's best for themselves. They want the boss nerf because it killed them. They want the loot increased because they didn't get the drop they wanted. They want the friction removed because the friction is uncomfortable. And if you listen to enough of those voices for long enough, you start making Path of Exile 1. There are prominent voices in this community. People like Paul Steron, who openly advocate for removing as much friction from the game as possible. Look at Last Epoch and see a model worth following, who think wisdom scrolls represent a problem that needs solving. And I want you to sit with that, what that opinion actually represents. It isn't a design suggestion. It's a worldview. Remove the inconvenience. Remove anything that slows the player down even for a single second. And we've seen this worldview win before. World of Warcraft's Dungeon Finder felt like a quality of life improvement on paper. No more standing in a city for 40 minutes looking for a tank. Just click a button and get placed into the group instantly. Convenient, or frictionless. And it quietly gutted the soul of the game overnight. The friction of finding a group was where the community lived. It was where friendships formed, reputations were built, and the world felt like a place rather than a lobby. Remember the friction, remove the friction, and you remove the glue holding everything together. WoW really never recovered from that decision, and most people who played through it know exactly the moment the magic left. GGG has always been a studio that listens to its community. That's one of the things I love about them. But there's a difference between listening and capitulating. And the history I spent this entire video walking you through is what capitulation looks like over 15 years. So this is my message to Mark and Jonathan directly. You know what made this game matter. You built it. Don't let the people who never want it to be hard in the first place define what it becomes next. The players who fell in love with the early days of Wraeclast were looking for a world where progress was meaningful because it was slow and deliberate, where you went to bed at night thinking about the item you almost had, the build you were inching towards, the map tier you were finally approaching, where the grind wasn't something you endured to get the good part. The grind was the good part. That feeling of working towards something that matters, of earning power one hard-fought step at a time, is the rarest thing in gaming. Most studios don't even try to create it anymore. GGG did. For a long time, they were the only ones who did. And somewhere along the way, they started listening to people who never wanted it in the first place. You have a second chance with Path of Exile 2. Don't spend it chasing the players who will never be satisfied until every obstacle is removed and every reward is guaranteed. Build it for the ones who are still grinding, the ones who never needed it to be easy, the ones who will happily spend 3 hours farming Cruel Edge if it means the support gem they find actually means something when they slot it in. Thank you guys for watching. I know this is pretty controversial and some of these ideas are definitely not shared throughout the entire Path of Exile community. So if you disagree, let me know why in the comments. I'd love to engage in a little bit of internet flame and debate. I'm not shy about it. So please, let me know what you think about this stuff. Really appreciate you watching if you stuck around this far. Consider dropping a like and subscribe for more Path of Exile related content. There are definitely some more hardcore things coming down the pipeline too that I'm excited to get my hands around. So hope you guys enjoyed the clips. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Yeah, we'll let them know.